looking at our levy election and just some reflections for our education operations levy. It's our recommendation again tonight with the resolution that's in the packet to go back out to seek further approval with asking them to reconsider. That's on April 26th. Again, we're asking on this levy for $5 million per year for 4 years. And again, the items that are really pretty, we're getting more specific and sharing this so that we are transparent and keeping the message really to the point. We're talking about textbooks, we're talking about learning materials. Extracurricular activities are not funded by the state. So really our focus is on the basic education of our students. So sports, band, club, special education services. We have to look at paraprofessionals, school psychologists. We'll talk about that in just a minute. It goes for utilities, transportation services, and personnel not funded through the prototypical funding model. Talking about that really quickly is on the left-hand column is what the state funds us for. And so look at the very first one, certified staff. They fund us for 94 teachers. And that's 30 less than what we have. And when we think about our schools, can you imagine doing less than 30? Admin, 5.5, classified staff, 21. We have 21 paras just at one school. Facilities and grounds, 3.2. So are we going to get by with 3.2 covering custodial and facilities? Warehouse technology, 1.1, central admin, and then central admin certificated staff. On the other column, included within this are just some other examples. Nurses, 0.3 is what we're funded for. This past year, we barely have had enough nurses. We only have one who's actually on our contract. The rest are, one who's on our staff. The rest are contracted services. Social workers, 0.123. Psychologists, that is 0.105. That's the rule of thumb across the country when it comes to school psychologists. We should be having closer to 2.5. So obviously the state is not funding us for what our needs are. And it's an outdated model. I mean, that's what it comes down to. So when it comes down to the levy, this is what it's going for. This is the supports of our students and student success. Okay, getting back to levy election real quickly. On the capital levy, looking for $750,000. We looked at Chromebooks, and we considered the last year of so much hybrid and remote learning. Thank goodness we have Chromebooks. Thank goodness we were prepared in that sense. But Chromebooks don't go away because of this pandemic ends and we're more in person. More and more textbooks and resources are accessed through Chromebooks. Maintenance and upkeep of facilities and small capital improvements. For example, we needed a roof on the multi-purpose room over at the middle school where the cafeteria is. And we accessed funds for that, as well as, again, just general upkeep. Computers for classrooms and staff, and major equipment such as, we can use these funds for boilers, HVAC systems, mowers, just all of that type. Anything you want to add on that? No, that's okay. So here we go with the 26th levy. April 8th is when voting begins, so ballots should be in mailboxes by the 7th or 8th. As we prepare information, so just on the information side of things, Our message is going to be simple. If anything, we are going to be even more transparent and just to the point. We'll have materials and information and a variety of media. We've talked about doing more informational videos, more information to go home, doing some town hall type, whether it's in person or in Zoom. I mean, that's all to be worked out. And then we've spent some time looking at voting trends. And what's interesting is the neighborhoods that were touched, either by us or by the Yes Committee, clearly in favor, close to 60%. So all of those places that were touched. We have some outlying precincts. So that was about 60%. Outlying precincts that went down to as low as 38%. And so now it's a matter of how do we reach those families and those voters to share what these levies would be for. Now, I'm confident if the levy were tomorrow or on April 28th, it passes. We work for the best, but we do prepare for the worst. And so now, between now and April 26th, we're doing dual tasks. On the one hand, we're, again, informing our public on the levy, but internally, we're preparing, okay, what does a $5 million cut look like? We've already started to meet with our bargaining units. We've already started to compile, Jennifer's done a great job compiling our seniority list, and really we're starting the conversation of how do you cut 16% out of a budget? Really, we need to look at that 84% is the basic education. How do we run a school on 84% of what we've had to meet those basic education needs? Again, sports and extracurricular activities, they are crucial for the development of our students. That's what keeps students engaged. But when it comes down to the basic education of the student, the state doesn't place a value on that in the formula. We'd be looking at district support staff that would be cut, library services, student supervision, crossing guards, lunch monitors, all of those things that really have made a difference over the last couple of years, especially in 19 when I first got here, and there was a request to just have a little bit more help. And then, of course, textbooks and curriculum. Here are some other factors for consideration that I think are key. And I know Director Terry is going to talk a lot about regionalization tonight, but here's a preview. So on the left-hand side is what regionalization is. So Everett is at 22% more funding than other parts of the state. They get just the 1.0. We're regionalized because we're in this northwest area that there are higher home values, a little bit more expensive, and so the state at that time had placed values of regionalization factor. Lake Stevens is also at 1.22. Mukilteo, they were at 1.24, but they've had to step down gradually. Edmonds at 18, Arlington 17. Monroe is at 18%. But the kicker to me is always Sultan. Sultan is, I always consider sort of our sister district. They're at 18%. Only Darrington and Granite Falls are at 12%. And so I always think the question is, what does this mean for our students? So for every dollar that Sultan gets, our students get 95 cents. And for Lake Stevens, every time they get $1, our students are getting 92 cents. What else did you want to add on that?
I think maybe if we go
One more?
one more.
Okay, I'll let you take it away.
So there's been some information posted in the voter guide and in the on Facebook about what a teacher makes in Granite Falls. I've seen numbers as high as 130,000. I've seen numbers saying that we are the highest paid district in the region. Here are the facts. This is pulled directly from OSPI. In the documents we'll share, we'll have the actual direct hyperlink to the documents on OSPI's website. These are the teacher salaries for all the school districts in our region for the 2021 school year. That's the last school year that's published on OSPI's website. So Everett prides themselves on being the highest paid teachers in our region, $111,000. You see quite a few districts over $100,000, and then Lakewood, Sultan, Darrington, Granite Falls, all right around $90,000, with Granite Falls sitting at $92,399. The average for the Snohomish County area the average of all these districts is $100,613. The statewide average is $90,793. So one of the messages we need to get across to our community is that, you know what, Granite Falls is not the highest paid teachers in the region. Granite Falls teachers aren't making astronomically high numbers. It really is, we're in the bottom 5 in our region of how our teachers are paid. And that is because of the other factors like regionalization and our ability to pass levies in our community that can raise the same amount of money that Everett and Lake Stevens can. Because we don't have a tax base that can raise the kind of money that Everett, Lake Stevens, Mukilteo, Edmonds, all those can raise. The second piece on this slide is what the actual 2022 in the voters handbook, what the districts were asking for with their levies. So you can see that Everett is asking their community to support $3.38 per $1,000 in assessed value in their community. Lake Stevens is asking $218. Mukilteo is asking $237. Edmonds is asking $150, but that's only because their capital projects levy wasn't up for renewal this time around. So I only included what was in the voters handbook. So Edmonds is going to be in the 60 cents probably for capital projects. Arlington did not have a levy up this time. Marysville is asking for $280. Monroe, their capital projects and their operations levy are not in sync. So their Monroe did not ask for a capital projects levy this time. They already have one coming from a previous election. Snohomish $240. Lakewood doesn't have anything on the ballot this time. Sultan $275. Darrington $167. No capital projects on the ballot this time. Granite Falls $211. So we are way below Everett, below Lake Stevens, below Mukilteo, probably below Edmonds, probably below Arlington, below Marysville, below Snohomish, below Sultan. We are about the lowest ask of our community on here, and we have the biggest gap in what the state funds us for in any of the districts in our community, in our region, and we have the lowest ask of our taxpayers. On a Granite Falls tax bill, the taxes paid to Granite Falls School District seem higher than the 211 because we have 2 bonds that our voters passed, one for the high school and one for the ski building and stadium upgrades. So those combined are about $1.64. So it looks a little bit higher, but what we're really asking for to operate our facilities and continued operations of our school district is about the lowest in the region. And going back to the theme that we do more with less.
Especially when you consider our affiliation of Everett, which is 10% more than us, and yet still goes out to the community with even more of an ask than their levies. So those were the slides we wanted to share. We'd be happy to answer some questions. Some things are certainly in the works. We see our task between now and the 28th, when we are preparing for the worst, to continue to build this skeleton of possible cuts. But at the same time, also getting out as much information to our voters on what these levies mean and the impact.
Board questions? Go ahead, Dr. Seizure.
I just have a question. Can you go back to the second slide that shows how many staff we have for, okay, that one right there. So that's what the state pays for. I wonder if we could add a column to that to show how many we have right now and how many we would lose in each of those positions, potentially. I mean, this is all theoretical, but really, it's not just this is what the state pays for, this is what we have to lose if we can't pass the levy, right? I think that really tells the story that we're trying to tell of what's at risk, what that risk really looks like. And I think I've had a community member stop me at the roundabout, you know, after we were out there waving signs last time, and one of the things he said to me was, you know, educational planning and operations, what does that mean? And I'm like, it goes for everything, including the PUD bill. You know, keeping actual lights on, paying for the heat, paying for the water. You know, the boiler needs maintenance at the high school, it pays for, you know, these levies. That's what the money is used for. So he asked that, he said, well, we just say that. He said, put a lot of words out there, just say that. So I'm sitting here now just saying that. That's what it's for. Keeping the lights on, keeping the people there to assist.
So on the ballot, we have a limit to the amount of words that we can put on in the ballot language. So our ballot language has to be somewhat succinct, thank you. And well, we need to do a better job of reaching the community where they are and explaining what this really means. And I think, you know, we have a vast difference in how our community likes to be communicated with. And we have to try and find all those different ways to reach out, whether it's a postcard, whether it's an online forum, whether it's an in-person forum, whether it's talking to them in person somewhere. We just have to find a way to meet them where they are rather than have them try and interpret what we're doing.
Well, we can call it the textbooks and keeping the lights on, buddy. There you go.
Questions?
I just have something kind of, I don't know how to describe it, a plea, if you will. As you're going through figuring out cuts and stuff like that, one of the things that I'd like to say is paras are incredibly important. And I'd like to see them, you know, the last scenario, because in 2018-19, before COVID hit, we had a lack of paras. My daughter's classroom was evacuated every single day from September to December. She had an interrupted education in an unsafe classroom. We are obligated by law to have safe classrooms, uninterrupted education. So without paras, we don't have that, especially here. So that is my plea, is that paras are a blast to even consider. And my question too is, you're saying that you guys have a seniority list, I guess, we're looking at. Is there a performance based off of that as well? Because just because someone's here for a long time doesn't mean that.
Within the collective bargaining agreement, there's a process, and so it is based on seniority.
Park, you have questions?
Yeah, we only have a couple of minutes.
I know, so it is a study session, so the rules are a little bit more lax. Are there questions from community that we can ask for you? I know it's kind of weird how going around, but anything you feel like we should ask? Anything you want to clarify? It's not really time to make like a statement, but anything you're wondering about in the presentation.
Or perhaps even just sending them to us and.
Or you can send us questions, concerns like this is where we appreciate being there. Okay. So one question I had is the prototypical school model. It's a great chance, it's a great, thing to on this page here is this is vital to get out. What stops us from sending this out in the past? Okay, I've seen this a few times in the school where it hasn't been sent out a whole lot. What stops us in the past? Is it just like most people I talk to have no idea what this is. They don't realize that the state only funds this for, 1/20th of the psychologist for the entire district. They have no idea of that.
I don't think we drilled down to the details like this. I mean, we shared at a number of places that, we only get funded for, points recite. But seeing it and seeing some of this other information, I think will resonate even more.
Because there's this misconception of the world that clear fixed everything. And I keep telling people, no, really it didn't. That's what you were sold. But here's the actual math and the numbers behind it. So I think we can get this out, we can do a better matter of explaining why I feel like the levy is so vital.
I think giving the context of what we have, what they funded us for, and what we stand to lose that's a story that needs to be told. What we stand to lose if the levy doesn't pass, it's people's jobs, our employees. The school district is like the largest or one of the largest employers in Granite Falls. Without the levy funding, families in Granite Falls lose jobs, right? So it's bigger than PE textbooks and keeping the lights on. It's also families that have their livelihood at risk. And these are good staff. We want to keep them. We don't want them going somewhere else because they feel insecure about their job here in Granite Falls. We want to keep them. So I really want to get that story out of what we stand to lose.
Just real quick, I think if we take away one thing from this is that we receive the least amount of money from the state of any districts around us, and we're asking the least from our taxpayers. And if we can all just message that, and then, we'll have all this documentation out in a very public area of access, and if we can get you the links to those, and if you're being asked in your communities, point them to this, just keep repeating, we get the least from the state, and we're asking the least of our taxpayers.
We're going to end our meeting to have time to get a regular board session. Thank you so much. So we're going to adjourn this special session and start at 6 o'clock in just a minute with our regular board meeting.
Hi, how you doing? Good to see you.
Mark,
I do apologize, by the way, for that.
is YouTube been ready for the regular session?
Yeah, YouTube's ready. It's going to be going still. It's muted right now until you
Okay.
adjourn.
Good to go.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I am.
Are you?
So, you have like that phone, I don't know what's going on down there. Let me see if I can get down there real quick here. And there's only about anything down here. I don't even know if this is even in the area that I don't think so.
I just got texted YouTube is not muted.
Huh?
It's not me that, so.
Yeah, damn it.
The scheduled board meeting, November 16th, 2022. Please, everyone stand, join me in the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, in attendance tonight we have Director Perry, Kate, Lee, and myself. You can engage as well as two representatives, Maya, and then Dr. Middleton as well with us. For the board comments, I would like to make a motion that we add an item to our agenda. This will be under new business, so it'll be 6H. I'll go to the office real quick. It's going to be discussion of the application process for filling board vacancies. So, we're going to be discussing 6H. So, motion's been made.
I'll second.
Motion's made in second. All in favor? Aye. All right, moving on to 2A, board comments. We shall start with, let's go crazy order. Maya. Any comments from the high school?
As of right now, but right now we're also starting GFSD classes that.
Are you guys gonna win?
We go.
Okay. All right. Let's go with, Director Beach. Yale Beach. Someone's looking to get right next to mine.
So I guess my comments I kind of said in the last meeting, but since this is technically a separate meeting, I'll go ahead and say it there. As we look to the funding and the levy, I think it's important for us to realize that $5 million is a tremendous impact to our budget. And we already do more with less, but the idea of what we stand to lose based on what is funded and is underfunded by the state, in my humble opinion. It affects our students, it affects our staff, it affects Granite Falls families, and I just think it's important to get out there and realize the story of what this pays for. It pays for our textbooks, it pays for curriculum, it pays for utilities, it pays for repairs, things, and it pays salaries for positions that those that work in the district absolutely know are vital to the success of our students each and every day. So I think it's really important that we tell the story in plain language of really what there is at stake with passing the levy and not passing the levy.
Director Kincaid.
Nothing right now.
Derek?
You're gonna do a ton of talking, so tonight, nothing other than to say that I still and always will have a deep appreciation for this community and their, the way that they have supported us in schools and stuff like that. And I know that we, as a district, need to do a better job, and it seems like we are communicating the need. Community, Granite always supports Granite, and that's the reason it kept me here for 16 years, the longest I've ever lived anywhere in my life. And I remain optimistic and positive and always will about this.
I could echo the sentiments of the fellow board members, Clay, and I will with that, the levy is vital. Appreciate the hard work community does do. I want to give a special shout out to fellow board member, Director Kincaid. We've had a substitute shortage in our district for quite a while. And she stepped up to the plate, is actually helping serve our students by being as substitute as she can. And she got the pleasure of teaching my daughter today. And I did ask her, she texted me, I did ask her the brief moment I saw my daughter today. She said, actually, she's like, oh, she's great. So according to my daughter, who is very picky taste, you were great. So thank you for actually stepping up to the plate and helping. So I really appreciate that. Moving on to 2B, staff recognition. Turns over to Dr. Middleton.
So tonight I'm awarding a special Mucker Award to Myra Untitled. So Myra, why don't you come on up? And as I've shared at our Success at Ed award ceremonies, the Mucker Award symbolizes something in a sport that I truly love, hockey. The Muckers on a hockey team work hard to get the puck away from the opponents, whether it's against the boards or in the corners, try and pass it to a teammate, get a shot on goal. Muckers often go unrecognized in the press, but are highly valued by their team and their coach. Myra is a Mucker in our district, but she's way too nice to be a Mucker on the hockey team. But when it comes to our finance office, she is tenacious, and her work is simply exemplary. Myra is one of our accounting technicians. She specifically oversees our accounts payables, each school's ASB accounts, and all the day-to-day accounting from reconciliations to treasury reports. She is also called upon to train and or assist our office professionals in maintaining their school accounts. Myra isn't just a Mucker, but her boss, Marshall Cruz, calls her, quote unquote, the investigator. It doesn't matter if it's a $2 expense that needs to be reconciled, she will not let go until every dollar is accounted for. I've worked in a number of districts in my career, and I can say without a doubt that each month and fiscal year, there's never any concern that accounts payable will be anything. It will always be close, it'll be as close to perfection as you can get in accounting. Now, the sad news for Granite Falls is that our latest mucker is taking her skills and talents and beautiful personality to Everett, which we're not happy about, but we understand, and good people who go on to do other things, and you will be so missed. Myra, we will miss you, your friendly spirit, and the perfection that you have brought to our finance department. So we want to give you the mucker award.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you for bringing your daughters tonight.
Yes. Especially, big thankful because I feel so, a lot of honor to be in Granite, and I love so much Granite. I will always support Granite wherever I am. Marshall and my team too, so thank you very much for
Thank
having
you.
me.
Thank you, Dr. Moore. All right, moving on to district reports. 3A, Granite Falls Middle School Annual Report, presented by Principal David King.
Well, thank you. And just at the beginning of February, when we were here and Dr. Mans was going through our school board reports, I turned to Dr. Milton and Melanie, and I was like, I haven't been in this room for 2 years and giving a report for 2 years. What a difference this has been over the past 2 years. And I think through the report tonight, I'll be able to share with you some positives and really the reality of what the last 2 years has been for the middle school and really for the district. And a lot of the stuff you're going to see tonight and that I'm going to talk about, it's not unique to Granite Falls. This is what schools are dealing with throughout the county, throughout the state, and really throughout the nation. So just to start off with, our first SMARTY goal, really just breaking that down. Are we getting our special needs students, we're closing the gap? Are we closing the gap with them to get them prepared to be successful in high school? And in the numbers there, you see, prior to COVID, we were at 59.2% of when our freshmen enter, are they prepared to be successful as freshmen? We moved it up, the goal to 61, we want to get to 69.2%. That's 2 or 3 students. And the number, that 10% right there, we decided, and I've been working a lot with Ann Rinker and Dr. Mans, and why did we pick 10%? We picked 10% because that is a good growth goal to establish to get our kids moving in the right direction. So the last data that was printed, we are at 64.1%. That's the 2021 school year. Again, that's the last OSPI data. So we bumped it up 5%. The goal, it's a 2-year goal. So we continue to work on that through this year and into next year and try and reach that 69.2% goal. Now, here comes the tough stuff. This is our iReady data. This is where our kids are in assessment. And if you have it in your in the PowerPoint there that I've given you too, the numbers are bleak. Being completely transparent with you, they are very low. We have kids that if we really were following special education protocol, we could have over 55% of our kids be eligible for testing for special ed. We have a significant amount of our kids 2 and 3 grade levels below where they should be. The data shows growth. Yay, we've grown, and I guess we're heading in the right direction, but the numbers are very low. So what are we doing about it? Today, for example, I was in a meeting with Dr. Mans and Jinju and Elizabeth Hemming. She's a representative from the ESD. We talked a lot about reading English language intervention, from very intense interventions where we are going to find specific kids and where their gaps are, put them in a 6-week course and try and get them up to grade level, to using our resources that we have already in our iReady assessments. And the iReady assessments, if we use that with Fidelity, the iReady, it gives the students work that they can do to build their success and growth. If we use that with Fidelity, because we were not using that the 45 minutes a week. So we're going to look at that. How can we improve both in math and ELA using the resources we have? We're in the process of adopting a new math curriculum. We've been, over the last couple of months, working with different companies, and the focus has been intervention. What can we do to get our students back on track? But really, what you're seeing is the lack of education over the past 2 years. Online we made what we could of it, but not having the students in the classroom, it is a reflection, those scores are a reflection of what has happened over the 2 years. So, and that was our math, this is our ELA. Really, you can see the same gaps that we're having, same low marks. Kids are improving since they've been back in the building, but we've got a long ways to go. And using the resources that we have, really researching interventions, and trying to really narrow it down to individual groups and how can we work with them to get them on track. So that's kind of been our action steps. When we were pre-COVID, we were doing a lot already with UDL and project-based learning, deeper learning, and then it kind of stopped with COVID. And this really leads into our second SMART goal of how can we reintegrate schools back into, or reintegrate students, families, and teachers back into the school system. We have really, when I think about our kids and our community, what is the value of education in the community? That question keeps coming up. Do we have teachers that are willing to meet our students at the level they're at right now and begin the process of reintegration? Do we have students that are coming to school with the idea that I am going to use school as a growth model versus I'm coming to school because I have to? And that's kind of the differences that we're seeing post-COVID. A lot of it is the have-tos instead of the growth model that we were seeing when we were doing a lot of project-based learning and UDL. We did a good job of starting the school year with make sure kids wear masks, make sure they're 3 feet apart, make sure we've got a plan for lunch. All those protocol things, we did a real good job of. The piece that we were not prepared for, and the piece that really caught us by surprise, was when the kids came in, what is their academic level, but also what is their emotional level. We are seeing kids, our sixth grade, when they last left school, they were in fourth grade. Our seventh graders, fifth grade, and our eighth graders were our sixth graders. Our eighth grade students, other than this year, they had been at the middle school for 6 months. And so we were not really prepared for the emotional needs and the behavioral needs of our students when they entered. They were, a lot of the behavior issues, a lot of the trauma that has gone on over the past couple of years has really changed what school has been like this year. And we are finally getting to a point 6 months into the school year where we are capable of dealing with the different student behavior. We just weren't ready. So we've been involved in a lot of social emotional trainings, again, working with Ann Renker throughout the school year, giving our staff more information on how to deal with student needs. And so that has been a growing process and a very good learning experience for our staff. And I've heard you guys talk about the levy and just kind of the community. In a lot of the things that we've done this year, reestablishing different policies, setting a tone for behavior, it feels like it's us against the community right now, and that's not a good feeling. Academically, behaviorally, like I said, any decision presented to the community, there's a feel of frustration amongst the community. And so I was talking with Dr. M and Dr. Mans, Dr. Middleton and Dr. Mans yesterday, excuse me, and we have to do some sort of education revival. The thing that is missing in schools over the past couple of years has been the celebrations, where we've brought families together, whether it be for open houses or for significant awards for kids, the National Junior Honor Society event, band concerts, all of those things that really brought the community to the schools, we have lost that. And we don't have that relationship with the families of the community to say, they don't have that feeling like, hey, this is my kid's school, because there's nothing really special that they've got to participate in. And so hopefully, as we continue to progress through COVID, we will be able to reintroduce some of the gatherings, some of the social events, some of the celebrations that we've been able to share with our kids and families in the past. The award piece is always an honor for kids. The before and after the awards ceremony, when families can come down, introduce themselves, shake our hands, get to know their teachers at a different level, that is where we are missing. And that's where the feel is like we do not have that relationship with the community that we have had, certainly over the last 20 years that I've been here. And so I think that's been part of the problem. And then I looked at some of the data that we've done from, and I just cut some quick pieces of the data from our Healthy Youth Survey. And you look at the numbers and it's only 30% or 40% or 50%. 50% of our kids are worried about being behind in school. That's 250 kids when you put it into numbers. 30% of them are only worried about feeling lonely. That's only 30%. We got 70%. That's 100 of our kids, 150 of our kids. That's a lot of kids that we're talking about in this data. you have the entire survey result that go through a bunch of different questions and a lot of different data that you can look at. But I just wanted to also share the percent that are depressed or sad, almost 50%. This one is just staggering to me when they ask about suicide. And at the bottom, percent attempting suicide during the past 12 months. 3% of our kids. That's 20 kids. 1%, 0.1% is too much. And so for this data, it just jumped out at me how much the last 2 years have affected kids. And this was right at the beginning, last year, basically, right at the beginning of COVID. Our kids are going to be taking this survey again. It will be real interesting to compare the difference, because the number of kids that our social workers and our counselors are seeing because of depression and because of the trauma that they've dealt with over the past 2 years is enormous. They have lines of kids waiting to see them. So again, we've got to meet the kids where they're at. We have a need for a lot of counseling for kids, mental health work. And I know Representative Kincaid made the mention about paras, and if the levy doesn't pass, and I'll echo everybody's sentiments, I'll be stunned if it doesn't. The trauma that will happen for our kids outside of jobs and all of that is going to be even more significant than the numbers we're showing now. This is from, the last pieces of data, that was from our COVID survey. This is from our Healthy Youth survey. And again, this is data that's kind of concerning to me a little bit when I look at really the community doesn't think drinking is wrong. A quarter of our community is saying, well, we don't think underage drinking is wrong when you look at the rest of the county and the state. Community doesn't think marijuana use is wrong. 35%, 27% in 2018 don't think that's wrong. And so, again, that's just, we need to reach out to the community. We need to do a better job of getting them into the schools, of making them feel like they are a part of the school, creating a positive feel for the schools again, and realizing that we're at like threat level midnight to get this back going again. So our climate and culture, I talked about at the beginning of the school year and our COVID protocols. Our staff and student health, talked a little bit about our student health. Our staff, and again, this is not Granite Falls, this is school in general. Our staff is really feeling the stresses of the kids. The kids are needy, they need the time with their teachers, and our teachers are giving and giving and giving, and that's taking a toll on them too. Emotional maturity I talked about, missing out on the social gatherings. Finally, we've been able to start sports and clubs again. That has been a revitalization for our kids. We have more kids participating in sports over this year than we've ever had. We have, for this season, we have 30 wrestlers, and we have almost 40 girls playing basketball right now. They are dying to be a part of something. And so I am glad for sports and clubs. The celebration and successes. This was going to be my entire report. So you got another half hour or 45 minutes and I can go through our CTE program. These are our super successes. This CTE program. 5 years ago, we passed a bond, the community passed a bond that we could introduce CTE to our schools. We have a cutting edge building and programs at the middle school. We have, over the last 5 years, we have talked about integrating the programs. Finally, this year, I can honestly say we are doing that. We have our agriculture program working with our manufacturing program. We have our manufacturing program working with our culinary program. Our culinary is working with math. Our robotics program is 4 through 8. So we've developed that integration piece that we have talked about for years and years. And because of the energy and desire of the teachers that are teaching those programs, this program will continue to grow and continue to be successful. This has been a highlight this year. We were fortunate to be able to hire some great people in those spots who are willing to work together, willing to build that program, and real excited to continue and watch that program grow. So this is the report. I mean, it's not roses and unicorns. It's a pretty rough report. It's a pretty tough time where the middle school is at academically and emotionally. But again, I'm going to echo that we are not unique in Granite Falls. I have a daughter who teaches at Msoc, and I have a wife who substitutes in Snohomish. When I talk to some of my friends in different districts, they echo the same sentiment. And so we're at a point now where we have to really do an inward look on what education is going to be like going forward. If we always do what we've always done, we're always going to get what we've always gotten. And so it's a time now, and what a great opportunity it is to really make this a learning experience and a change piece for the Granite Falls School District. Thank you. If you have any questions,
Board, question?
go ahead.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay. I appreciate you coming to us straight yesterday and talking through the good, the bad, the ugly. I guess I just wanted to ask the question, you know, I can't wait for the day that I can stop using the statement, these unprecedented times and stuff like that. But, you know, with all the challenges that we're facing, you know, unlike really, I think anything that we've regularly faced in the educational environment, certainly in the last few centuries, what out of the box, unprecedented things can we do to support kids emotionally, academically, of course, socially? I guess, and I'm not asking for an answer right now, but I guess I want to let you know that I'm committed to do, you know, anything in my power to help those things come to fruition. You know, as a parent that has had, you know, a child that's contemplating suicide, those numbers break my heart because those are kids that are hurting right now, and they deserve better than what we're providing them right now. And I know that we're struggling as a system, as a country in many ways, but we have to find a way to do it, right? Winners win. I mean, we have to find a way to keep moving forward. Winners keep moving forward. So, I want to let you know that whatever I can do to support, you know, out of the box, you know, thinking or things that, you know, you think that can help bring that number down and influence in a positive way, you know, I will do everything I can.
I know that. Thank you. Yeah, some of the inbox stuff. I mean, next year we're looking at at least each 6th grade student, hopefully every student be involved in a social emotional class. I know we're teaming with the high school. They're going to do a program up there. Those are the type of things that we're doing. The school piece, but Carl is right. I mean, the numbers are staggering. Social workers, Miss Alexis that we have at our school, Alexis Rackley, I mean, she is doing a fantastic job with what she can. Karina Myers, our counselor, she's working with kids, and really our staff, and that's kind of where our staff gets to this emotional not exhausting, but it is pretty tiring, but we are pouring our hearts out every day to these kids to try and reintegrate them and bring them back into school system and school mindset. And really it is, how can we make sure that they get their basic needs met first? So that's kind of what we're at.
So I appreciate your transparency in the report and not just telling us the good stuff, but, you know, the good and the not so good, the opportunities, right?
Opportunity.
And I definitely can feel your emotional connection to the student needs, like that comes through really clearly. When I think, okay, so on slide 2, the SMART goal 1 is for students with disabilities, but then the data you gave, is that for just students with disabilities, or is that?
No, that was our overall, and I wanted to show here that we are closing the gap in special education. But overall,
Do we know what the number is?
I got data from one of our special education teachers. 28 of 36 students of hers had academic growth from first assessment to second assessment. So we are growing across the board in special education, but we're also growing and are getting our freshmen ready to be successful. This data was just a reflection of our entire school, and the reason that I put that on there is because to close the gap with special education, it becomes an entire school.
Well, like you said, 55% can qualify for special education.
They can
with those
test, yeah,
numbers.
I mean, there's,
Right, yeah, test, I guess, but I would be interested to see, I don't remember, and I can't remember the rules if I'm allowed to ask Dr. Mills the question, but I know that we started already a couple of years ago, but I don't remember when we first did it, but I'm interested to follow over time, like the classes, you know, over however many, couple of years of data to see where that is. I know you don't have it, but I'm just thinking, while I'm sitting here and you're presenting.
it was interesting today to talk with Ginju a little bit, and she was bringing up some of the kind of the foundation of iReady, and if we use it with Fidelity, we'll see much more success. And so those are conversations now that I have to go back to our teachers, and I know they'll be very willing to do this, but there's a sweet spot of 45 minutes of intervention a week that kids need to be involved with. And because of everything that's going on, that 45 minutes hasn't been met consistently. And so those are things that we need to
Well, I'd like to
kind of
thank
regroup.
John Thompson then for requiring my son to be 45 minutes by radio.
There you go.
So at least some of the kids are getting it
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he requires it. So I heard you say, and this is the part, I appreciate the honesty, but I think it points out that we as adults have work to do. We were not prepared for our students when they returned, right? I mean, owning it is one thing, but, and then I heard you say we just weren't ready. But I've also heard Dr. Middleton say, and I heard you say it later on, right? We need to meet students where they're at.
Yeah.
So I think, so I'm curious, what, and we won't have the answer, but when you say that to your staff, to meet the students where they're at, what does that mean to them?
Yeah.
Because they're feeling, is their sense of whatever, because they're expecting that eighth grader to be an eighth grader, and it's just not, right? And so once there's sort of that acceptance, if you're in the middle school, a middle school has sixth graders too, but they're just, because in their career, maybe or their experience, eighth graders act a certain way, and so they're not meeting that expectation, so it throws them off. But if we're meeting our kids where we're at, yeah, you tell me, because I don't work in education.
Right, so-
Wouldn't that mean that we're resetting our expectations, not trying to just point out how deficient they are?
Yeah,
I don't
so-
know.
Exactly right. And so when we started the year, you were exactly right. Eighth grade is coming in, and our eighth grade teachers have these standards that they're supposed to meet for science and math and reading. And our sixth grade, this is what they are supposed to meet with their standards. When they came in, they were not there. They were not ready. And so one thing that we continue to do is bi-monthly, every month, with something that we haven't done. We bring them down into our commons area and we have certain just grade level meetings and we talk about behavior and we talk about being on time and really stuff that is general school things, but we're kind of taking step backs and starting off from, you know what, you probably should have known this coming in, but we didn't teach you that. So now we're going to teach you this. Another success that I didn't mention, 2 months ago, we talked about our tardies. 28% of our kids were tardy on a regular basis. So I made this, we made this policy, and the kids had a little bit of part of this, that we are going to work on our attendance and our being on time and being prompt. Because and when you go to an entry-level job, which they're going to be happening here in the next 2 to 5 years for them, can you be there is the number one thing. So now our tardiness is down to 3%. So those are the things that when we look at this, okay, we got to take a step back and we have to teach them, not reteach them, but we have to teach them that it's a value to be in school, in the classroom. It's a value to be able to be focused in the classroom and not worry about what this is. And so those are things that we are meeting the kids where they're at, but we're also teaching them really basic things that should have been, had they been in school over the past 2 years, would have been learned, developed, and ready for middle school. So we've gone back to okay, we're teaching our sixth graders what they should have done in fourth, fifth grade.
Just a couple other things real quick is that, well, 2 things. One of the things that was really sad to me was that feeling that your staff have of the us against them with the community. I don't think there's a single community member or parent that would want it that way.
Not at all.
And I think we have a lot of opportunity there, and that just that statement should make everyone step back and reevaluate, right? Because that is not the direction our school, our students, our staff, anybody should have with the community or with the parents, right? It's a partnership, 100%.
And it's a 100% agree, but it's that absence of being at the school that has been partially responsible for, parents don't know, our teachers don't know our parents don't know our teachers, and you send your kids to us, they come home and say, well, this is what happened. The parents take that and it becomes us against them.
Well, I think all the way around, that's a opportunity for everyone to hear. And then, right, I mean, there's many things to talk about, but I think the last part is maybe we have an opportunity with the awards and getting to know the teachers and the sports and the clubs and the things, because we've had 2 years of Director Terry's unprecedented times. And we're kind of over it, and we have to accept that our award ceremonies just aren't playing out the way they used to. So what can you do that the kids can still feel acknowledged and appreciated for their efforts, whatever. I don't know the answer to that, but we can't do what you said that thing at the end. We can't keep doing anything we did, but I don't know what the answer is. But I appreciate calling it out, and I guess I'll issue the challenge to, if we can't do what we always did, what do those award ceremonies and parent-teacher interviews, what do they look like?
Yeah.
Because it is important in your school that you're calling it out, so there it is.
And I don't think Zoom is the connection piece right now. I mean, we've Zoomed ourselves to death. So we got to think outside the box and try and figure out how we can create that atmosphere with the guidelines that we have.
So I wanted to just acknowledge something that I really, really thought was profound that you did, and I never seen you do it on purpose, because you're a smart guy, is a lot of times when we look at numbers and data, we like to treat the symptoms. How do we get the numbers better? I feel like you really delved into finding out why the numbers were so low. Instead of treating a symptom, you look for the cause. And the cause is, that lack of social emotional connection kids and families have in school. I really just want to, that's profound on a level that it's simple but profound at the same time. So I think I'm trying to say there is, I appreciate that. We've been forced to do things that I never would have, wanted to do. I mean, just not having parents in the school anymore, having to wear a mask all the time, things that personally, I don't want to go crazy on there, but I think the answer, and the out of the box thinking is how do we get these things to work? When there's limited number of options where basically we're conflicts on regulations and rules and stuff. And that's really going to be the key change. I mean, Carrie and I have been to several conferences over the years together, and we're constantly hearing about how kids involved, kids who have a purpose other than just academics, it's social, emotional, whether it's band, whether it's a club, they do better in school. And so, and families for that matter as well. So I appreciate you realizing, what the actual cause is, not just focusing on the symptom of what's happening. So I really, really appreciate that.
Thank
All right, thank
very
you.
much. All right, before we move on, I would like to, we'll take a quick little break, 2-3 minutes. If you feel need to leave, you can. So for example, you can head out if you want to. Anyone else who is just here for something very far, you don't have to wait entire time. So let's, we'll start up again in 5 minutes at 6:48.
I bought it like after, so I was like, oh.
And no, Mr. Razor, Mr. Raymond, oh, you're kind of suck at job.
I'll let them know. I'll correct them for you. Like, hey, wait up, it wasn't her fault.
6:48, all right, we're adjourning. Next is 3B, I hate that word. Regionalization funding report presented by Dr. Harris.
Hey, board, those words would be a lot, looking at you guys from this angle. So I put together a presentation today to discuss regionalization, which anyone who knows me and my passion knows that the regionalization factor that we have been assigned at the Granite Falls School District is factually incorrect and does not represent what it should be. To be honest, I wrote this presentation to hopefully make you angry. That I'm intentionally trying to pull at your anger because we need to be angry about this, because I personally feel that we have been specifically, intentionally deprived of funds that should be ours. So if you're not angry by the end of this presentation, let me know, and then I'll talk another 30 minutes and tell you why you should be angry. So in order to understand regionalization, we really have to understand kind of the prototypical school funding model, which Marshall talked about a little bit earlier today. I'm not going to go into it deeply. The prototypical school funding model, as we've talked about today, is broken. It doesn't work. It's never worked. The theory didn't fix it. It doesn't represent the true needs of what a school district needs to provide a paramount duty of education for our students. I've often been asked by colleagues in other districts and other school boards why I don't focus on the prototypical school funding model more in my frustration and discussion, and I hone in on regionalization, and the simple answer is prototypical school funding model is not something that Carl Carey of Granite Falls School District is going to be able to rectify, right? It is broken for us, it's broken for Tukwila, it's broken for Chehalis, it's broken for Wenatchee, it's broken across the board. There is a tremendous amount of voice there, but regionalization is something that's specifically assigned to a district based on a number of factors. I'm going to talk about those factors today. That I feel is something that I can fix. That is something that I feel that I can shine a light on and I can get a fix, because spoiler alert, I think we've been underfunded by the tune of approximately $3.2 million. Okay, so what I'm going to do today, I'm going to talk about the main factors on how state funding, kind of the prototypical model, kind of what are the basics of the prototypical model. How does regionalization funding affect the Granite Falls School District, or how does regionalization affect us? My specific concerns related to our calculations of regionalization, and then kind of next steps. Okay. So this is a presentation that the Washington Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, or OSPI, provided to the Legislative Council. Just a couple of weeks ago. I didn't change that date. And this presentation was provided by TJ Kelly, who is the CFO of the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. I say that name because I want you to remember it, because I'm going to discuss some email communication that I had with him later in the presentation. So, in the hierarchy of OSPI, it goes Chris Reichdahl, who is the Superintendent of Public Instruction, and TJ Kelly is really the next run down of the ladder. So funding for a school district it starts with enrollment, right? So enrollment is really the driver that drives everything else. So enrollment leads into formulated staffing units, that's teachers, administrators, those types of things, which then rolls into an allocation or a calculation of salary and benefits. That is where regionalization comes in, at that salary and benefit level. And then material supplies and operating costs, Msoc, which, if you've been in this for a while, used to be called NERC, non-educated related costs, right? And by the way, Marshall, stop me if I say something wrong. I give you full ability to jump in here. So enrollment, as you guys know, we are responsible to report our enrollment to OSPI on the first of every month on a 10-month calendar. I think September is the only month that we reported, like on the 5th day or something along those lines. Obviously, at the start of the year, they give you some time to get students in. That's almost always, in some small situations, it's based on the head count. And head count really applies to like special education and stuff like that, but on almost everything, it's on an FTE basis. So when I say the prototypical funding model, what does that mean? So a prototypical school is a fixed theoretical school size. So it's a school that's based upon a theoretical enrollment, and based upon that theoretical enrollment, the state allocates basically everything under that. So it's based on a model where you have 400 kids in K through 6, 432 and 7 through 8. As it says, 6th grade is part of middle school. It still funds at that elementary school level, and high school 9 through 12. Okay, so based on that prototypical model, they have ratios. Now these ratios are not state mandated, other than K through 3. There's a state mandate for class size based upon that. The others are just kind of a prototypical definition of what a class size ratio should be. I'm not going to read that to you. Obviously, you can see the breakdown in grades there. You know, the interesting thing, and I guess I'll just pause here for a second. The interesting thing that I find, when you look at, we have mandated K through 3 teacher to staff ratios, and then it goes up from there significantly after 4. I've been on the board 8 years, so this is the beginning of my 9th year. There's always a tremendous amount of data that's discussed. Whenever you talk about best solutions for best educational outcomes for kids, and this will say that, or that'll say, you'll get this data that says this. There's one data set that cuts through all of that. And that data set says that the lower the teacher to student ratio, the better the educational outcomes for kids. We all know it. And yet the state, again, has this what I would imagine, very high and unrealistic model of what those class ratios would be. But again, I can speak to you about 3 hours just on the prototypical school model. So again, based upon this prototypical model, then we start to get into the funded staff position. So for every 400 kids in elementary K through 6, we get 1.2 principals, 0.6 libraries. So this is obviously equivalent of full-time. The really important things, and I've talked about this, the state funds us at 0.076 school nurses for every 400 kids. The state funds us for 0.017 psychologists for every 400 kids in elementary school. Custodians, 1.6, student staff safety is 0.079. So I like to look at this number a different way. So let's look at how many we would have to have for the state to fund one employee. We would have to have 23,529 kids just in elementary school for the state to fund one psychologist. One! That means that psychologist has a caseload of 23,000 kids. Is that realistic? I don't think so. Social workers, 9,524 just in the elementary school. And then the high school is 40,000. Again, look at this and tell me that Cleary fixed it. It didn't. Again, I could talk 2 hours on this, okay? So when we look at salary and benefits and the way regionalization rolls in, so a couple of things. So the allocations are provided based on assumed statewide average amount of salary, separately by certificated instructional, certificated administrative, and classified staff. Some districts benefit, like us, from a regionalization factor, and this is key. Because we're going to talk about this a lot. That regionalization factor is based on the residential property value of the district and the area 15 miles immediately surrounding the district borders. Okay, very important part. I'm going to come back to that again. Okay. So
here's the allocation value for staff type, and here's the regionalization factors. So there's a 1.0, a 1.6, and a 1.0 is basically no regionalization factor. A 1.6, a 1.12, a 1.8, and a 1.24, okay? And again, that is an additional amount that is applied, regionalization is an additional amount that's applied to salary and benefits based upon the realistic or the state's realistic expectation of what the cost of living is, again, in that district and district is 15, within 15 miles. Then there's this experience mix factor of additional 4% that you can get on top of regionalization. Marshall, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there only like 4 districts in the entire state?
I think it's
that
4.
qualify that
Yeah.
for that, right? So that's almost non-existent. It's almost laughable that they put it in there. And the experience mix factor where you were able to get additional money based upon the experience level, degree level, experience level of your staff. Okay. So a couple of big takeaways on this is I want you to recognize these 4 data points of regionalization of a 6, 12, 18, and a 24. So now let's look at the regionalization map. Okay. This is Granite Falls, and we've been assigned a 12% regionalization factor. We've got Darrington and Index, which are also in 12s. And then if you look at every other surrounding district, so Lake Stevens at a 24, Snohomish at a 24, Everett at a 24, Mukilteo at 24, Marysville at 18, Lakewood at 18, Arlington with 18, Stanwood at 18. I said this before and I'll say it again, that the Granite Falls School District, we're one of only 9 school districts in the entire state of Washington that touches a district that has greater than a 10% regionalization factor. And we're one of only 2 school districts in the entire state of Washington that touches 2 school districts that have greater than a 10% regionalization factor. What did I say earlier about how they calculated it? It's based on the median value of the school district and any district that it touches within a 15-mile radius. Okay. So this is the RCW 28A 15412 that basically codified law for regionalization. So I'm not going to read this whole thing to you, but there's a couple of very specific things I'm going to point out. It says for school districts with single-family residential values above the statewide median residential value, regionalization factors for school years 18-19 through school year 22-23 are as follows. For school district tertile 1, 6%. For school districts in tertile 2, 12%. For school districts in tertile 3, 18%. What don't you see there? You don't see a 24, right? I go back to this map and it says, well, there's a 6, there's a 12, and there's an 18. Why am I staring at so many 24s? Well, let's get to that in a second. The RCW goes on to say that, again, the proximate to the school district means within 15 miles of the boundary of the school district, for which the median residential value is being calculated. School districts in tertile 1 are the value of the tertile districts for single-family residential values above the statewide median residential value. Again, 2 and 3. And again, it defines what the median residential value, which is the median value of single-family residential parcels located within all school districts reduced by 5%. So one other thing I just want to point out that I didn't read initially, it's this important B part. It says, in addition to the regionalization factor specified in A of this subsection, school districts located west of the Cascades, obviously we are, and sharing a boundary with any school district with a regionalization factor more than 1 tertile higher are regionalized by 6 additional percentage points. So the reason I bring that up is, again, if you look at this map and you read that, there was an intention by the legislature that they knew that by having school districts that are so far apart of regionalization would create a situation where they can't compete There's, their funding is so drastically different that they did and this is their word, they did a smoothing. So if you were in tercile 1, a 6%, and if you were next to a district that was an 18%, they would bump the 6% up to a 12 because they didn't want a district to have more than 6% difference. But here's the rub. RCW only defines, what did we say, 6, 12, and 18. It makes no definition of 24. So even though we are greater, twice the difference, 16% difference, 12% difference than 2 adjacent districts, because it makes no definition of what a tercile 4 would be, and we don't get any type of smoothing or any type of justification for that. Okay? So, it says it's based upon the median home prices in the district, right? It says that it's comparative to, what other districts, their home and the boundary of 15 miles of any district you touch. And of course, this is just taking into effect what the Zillow home pricing is for districts in our area. But I stand to fail to realize or to understand really how we can have a median home pricing of $427, which by the way is almost $50,000 greater than Sultan, who gets an 18% regionalization factor. And in the vicinity of Marysville, who again gets an 18% regionalization factor. And again, we touch more 24 percentile districts than any other district other than one in the entire state. Again, how we are only justified at 12%. So I'm a seeker of truth. I mean, there's got to be data, right? There's very specific data in the RCWs that says, hey, if you are a median home price within 15 miles of a boundary, you are tercile 1, tercile 2, tercile 3. And then the other question that I have, because again, the 24% regionalization factor isn't defined in code anywhere. It's actually addressed only in the state budget. Well, how the heck did Lake Stevens and Everett and Metapeel and Snohomish, how the heck did they get assigned a 24% regionalization factor? Right? It's not defined. It's almost like, somebody handed it to them. So I mentioned the name earlier, TJ Kelly. So I reached out to TJ Kelly, again, the CFO of OSPI, and I asked for a couple of things. I said, hey, and my goal here is not to demonize TJ. Him and his staff have been extremely responsible. OSPI did not write this RCW. He's just, unfortunately, the receiver of my many emails at 1 o'clock while I'm doing that because I'm thinking about this and can't fall asleep. So I said, hey, TJ, I'd like to have 3 things from you. I'd like to have the data related to median home prices that was used to determine the grouping. Each tercile, for example, 6% is in this range of the median home price, etc. I'd like to have the data used to determine the median home prices for the following districts: Granite Falls, Lake Stevens, Arlington, Sultan, Marysville, Snohomish, and Everett. And I'd like to have the data or information used to determine what districts qualify for the 24 regionalization factor. So I was trying to decide whether to say this in a nice way or not. My understanding of how the 24 regionalization factor was assigned to districts, and I freely admit that this may be wrong, but my understanding is that these districts that were awarded this 24 regionalization factor were able to lobby the state before as they were writing the budget, to ask for some additional money based upon whatever factor they have. I don't know if that's the truth, but it appears to be a handshake deal at the last minute, for some districts that were able to get that law. The argument that I've heard is, well, they sunset. So anything above 18, every year you read less and less and less. But guess what? Every year you get more and more and more than we do, right? Up until the fact of when they're at the 18%. So TJ, again, very nice guy. Here's his response. Now, I don't want you to miss a word, so I just want to read it to you. Hi, Carl. Unfortunately, OSPI does not have the data you request. At the time regionalization factors originally became law, OSPI made repeated requests to legislative fiscal staff for the information used to determine the terciles. The staff, who are not the same individuals in those roles currently, never responded with the detailed data we needed to confirm the assignments of regionalization factors. Their response for each of our repeat requests was essentially, the bill describes the calculation for you. You should be able to figure it out on your own. I was never able to confirm nor understand the apparently unwillingness to share the data. Our goal was to provide a detailed spreadsheet online with property values and calculations that we, or districts themselves, independently verify. We were never able to get them. So while I certainly respect and honor TJ Kelly's response to this, it pisses me the hell off. Because again, the impact of this for us as a school district, again, just comparing what we would be at if we were at an 18% regionalization, is approximately $818,000 a year, or $3.2 million if you take it from 1819 until today. And the explanation that we weren't able to get the data, we don't have the data, I'm sorry, for something that is so defined and specific to data in the RCW that created this thing, how they just couldn't go, oh, well, here's how we figured it out, and slide over a spreadsheet of how they evaluated all the median home prices, and that put Granite Falls here and Arlington there. Someone could prove to me why we were at 12%, I won't like it, but I will certainly accept it. So it's a question mark, and I don't know why other districts haven't pushed harder back at this, and I'm guessing other districts aren't impacted as we are in Granite, but here in Granite, we do more with less. So where I would like to go from here, and I don't need the board to vote on it or anything like that, but I guess I just want to, again, make you angry and make you aware. Where I'd like to go to from here is making a formal public records request to the legislature, requesting the data that they use to determine the applicable regionalization factors for each district. I don't know I don't know the time frame or how long that is going to take, but someone somewhere should be able to provide this information. And then I want to review it. I want to tear through the data with the help of Marshall and Dr. M, and I want to verify that we were assigned a fair and equitable regionalization factor. But if we weren't, I think it's time to take the next step. Now, you can make your definition of whatever the next step is, but certainly we need to fight harder on this, because I see this as a glaring hole of an issue where we and our students and our families that we represent have been severely impacted to the negative. So that is going to be a situation that we're just going to have to keep an eye on. The other thing I think that we need to do is we need more attention on this from our legislators, specifically Representative Sutherland, Representative Eslick, and Senator Wagner. Now, to Senator Wagner's credit, I think a year or two ago, he did try to get a bill passed that would specifically increase the regionalization for Granite Falls, but I don't think that bill ever saw the light of day. It never saw a committee. It never really went anywhere. So there's definitely an awareness that there's a problem. I've copied Senator Eslick and Representative Eslick and Senator Wagner on all of my emails with TJ. I haven't heard anything from their office or anything, but there is a virtual town hall that both of them are having. I'm looking it up on Saturday, February 19th, that I will be attending, and I've already emailed them. They asked for emailed questions. I've already emailed them, hey, what are you doing to address the deficiency and unjustified regionalization that's been applied to Granite Falls? I'm certainly going to try to ask that question. I don't know the format, but what I need is help, right? Because I think we've been too complacent and quiet on this. And Marshall said this, and it's probably true. You know, when they see me coming around the corner, they kind of move the other way. So I feel like I've almost reached my maximum level of being able to communicate this to them. But if we as a community, as a district, as a community, if we all band together and we talk about this specifically with facts and details about how we have been, again, severely financially impacted, I think that we might be able to start breaking down some walls. So that's all I've got. Questions?
More questions?
I have a question.
Please.
How often do they evaluate like home values to come up with this information? Because like recently our home values are skyrocketing.
Right. Really good question, and I don't think it's in this RCW. So the RCW does say that beginning with the 2023 legislative session, and every 4 years after that, they're going to reevaluate the regionalization factor. So I guess that's a really good point, Director Kincaid. That's another thing that we can do. Certainly I'm fighting for, what we should have had from here. But we also, again, by reaching out to our legislators, we need to let them know, hey, when you do this reevaluation, we need to have a justified amount. So thank you for bringing that up. I forgot to address that.
My points, I knew that it was every 4 years, but I wanted to kind of put a pin in the fact that I want to say that it's due by November of 2023. I don't see it right there, but I know I read it online somewhere in the RCW that it had to be completed, the evaluation by November 2023, which means we have to put a pin in and remember to mention it to our representatives and our senators as that time is approaching and make that request of, keep in mind, we're going to ask you how you calculated our median value, right? That's important to us. So I wrote something down. Oh, in fact, I was going to say the same thing. So you mentioned that we've been complacent and quiet on this. I'm going to challenge you on that, sir. I don't think you have been complacent or quiet. Because there have been many meetings with our state representatives and our state senators. There have been many emails over time to try and figure this out. We've asked nicely several times. We've driven to Arlington and other places to meet with them face to face, make phone calls, sent emails, sent letters. So no, I don't think we've been complacent. But we haven't come up all angry. And maybe, and we've gone back and forth on this because, it's time. It's time to make a public records request. And if we can't work it out, then maybe we have legal look at this and review it to see what our options are. Because I feel like what we see in the RCW seems obvious, but have legal look at the RCW. That's their wheelhouse, right? If they see it the way that we see it or anything close, then there's another conversation to be had, because here we are asking the community, but we're also asking the state going, our kids are worth it.
Right.
You keep fighting and asking nicely and showing up and making phone calls and having meetings and sending emails, but it's time to send it over to legal and see what they think too.
And I don't want to say too much, so Dr. Hickman, because, we talk about litigation and pending litigation in executive session for a number of reasons, but I guess I will say that we've started that communication as you've talked about. It's actually started weeks ago, so.
It's worth, you don't spend a dollar to save a nickel or whatever, but I don't think that that's what we're doing. All signs point to, they just don't know the data, and the CFO rolls up his hands and goes, I don't know, I asked. Sorry, Granite, he didn't, it's the CFO, he just throws it over the fence and throws juices and walks out. I just am like,
I feel like you're angry, that's what I wanted.
yeah,
love it.
well, no, I was angry the first time I saw the email, and like you say, it's not TJ Kelly, but he's the CFO, it's the role, as the CFO, your job is to know these kind of things, or to know who to ask to find it out. Not to just go, hey, sorry, Carl, I asked several times and nobody gave me the answer, so you're 12%, man, and I have no idea why. That's not a good answer, anyway.
Couldn't agree with you more.
So I'm mad, perfect job.
A couple comments. So first off, you want to get me angry, you did it. No, not thank you. I don't like implications. We weren't already angry. I kind of take offense to that. I've been pissed off about this for, since 2018. But I do appreciate this report so the community can see it. I've been angry for a long time. So just want the record that I didn't need the report to get angry. I've been sending a lot of nasty emails myself. They will be nastier. I'd like to point out one thing in the conversation I had with, was at a WASDA conference about this. I don't remember who it was, but one of our issues is that 15 miles goes out the mountain loop up in the hills. And that's part of the calculation they're using, from what I understand.
So it's 15 miles from the boundary. So.
Yeah, so it's going out like,
So
into the mountains anywhere, so that's bringing us down. And I think part of the problem that we were talking about was we need to adjust the RCW going like, why are we getting dinged for, going out in the middle of nowhere?
So all of that affects our median home value, so I don't disagree.
Yeah.
But then the 15 miles actually then, so we get, and
Yeah,
this is
exactly,
verified legal, we get the full median home values in the home, which is Lake Stevens, of Arlington, of
Yeah,
Marysville.
but yeah, well, I was at the WASDA conference, this was 2019, we were talking about this, it was the fact that, might have been, 19, that the mountains bring us down. And it's like, there's a flaw.
I know, we're consulted at 18, and they're
Oh, because-
surrounded by index and Granite. Oh,
Maybe along Highway 2, they got higher home values. I mean, again, it doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of different factors, and that's the whole point I'm trying to make with you agreeing to is that it doesn't make sense. Like, there's no numbers behind it. In fact, they can't share it is the most disturbing thing is like, they just I feel like they just threw a dart and called it good. And that's what's been upsetting about this for so many years of just, no one can explain it. There's no rhyme or reason or logic to it. And if there is, and they can explain it to me, great, just like you said, but I'm not seeing it, and I'm pretty decent with numbers. I just can't see it. So I really hope that the community sees this presentation and realizes that we have been sending nasty emails, but we need the whole community behind us.
we said
Nice emails, but might have been pretty, not nasty, but they've been pretty direct. But can you explain this to me in any reasonable way? But I think Carl's right. The next step is get the community on it, not just board members. The entire community is only going to get this thing moving. So those are my comments.
Anything else?
I think I do want to mention that the difference is the approach we've taken is to go through our senators and our representatives to ask them to represent the interest of Granite Falls. And now we went to the CFO and represented our own interests for Granite Falls because we didn't get the action. We did get one bill, and I did see it online. I looked it up, and you're right, it never saw the light of day. Appreciate you taking the time to write it, but it never went, past anyone's desk.
Yeah.
But we tried the legislative route. That's not working out for us. We went to the CFO. That's not working out for us. And so I think that I 100% agree with the path that you've already begun, which is a legal representation and your proposal for, a records request. It makes sense. I 100% support that. Last week.
Thanks so much.
Awesome.
3C, board report. WIA, I'm just filling in that role. I was actually out of town this past week. I did not have anything notes that I got from Michael. Sorry. WIA wise. So nothing to report on that. Ledge report. Carl, anything you want to add or is that just kind of?
No, gosh, I do have some,
Okay.
a couple of things real quick. Hold on, I don't know why I put my computer away.
Do you want to do a community report real quick?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Just that the community liaison Facebook page is up and running, and we'll hopefully be coming out more information shortly. Just kind of the beginning stages of getting that going. I was also in contact with the city council and community coalition, and I have not heard back from the chamber yet. I was hoping to get to city council meetings, but they are at the same time as we are. So I'm hopefully going to, and I haven't
I talked to him a little bit, but I'm hopefully gonna coordinate with Tom Fitzgerald and hopefully kind of, talk to him about what went on in the meetings and maybe he can explain the minutes and that sort of thing, so I can get a good idea. And I did hear back from Community Coalition, and I'm gonna be, checking that out as well. Yeah, that's about it.
All right.
Yeah, so, yeah, a couple of things, so,
But I'm sorry. Were there any questions? I should ask that. Any questions, Director Kincaid? Okay, sorry. I'm trying to
Good job.
follow the Director. Yes, sorry.
So, WASDA has asked me a couple of times to be a legislative rep for WASDA. I've turned them down multiple times. I had a great conversation with Marissa Rathbone, who is the legislative coordinator for WASDA. She's not very aware of regionalization factor because most of the school districts in Eastern Washington don't even have regionalization factors. And she's like, Carl, this, it's got to be reevaluated in 2023. This would be a great time for you to be a legislative rep for WASDA. You can help teach us, help move forward, things that help put the light, shine a light on this. So I told her yesterday I'd do it. So I get to fill, and they had a resignation. So there's I'm only nominated, appointed, I guess, till the end of the year, which then I can run for a 2-year term. We'll see, but it gives me some time to at least start to have some conversations with other districts and try to get Lawson to have a platform to get this addressed. So, again, the only reason I'm doing it is to shine a light on this and to try to help us get this to some closure. So, hopefully I can do that by the end of the year. The only other thing I want to talk about is House Bill 1664, which is a bill that's passed through the House and it's going to the Senate. And this bill is intended to increase the allocation. So again, we talk about the prototypical school funding model. The intent of this bill is to increase the percentages specifically for physical, social, and emotional support staff. So the intent is to, well, I won't go through all the percentages, but essentially for school nurses, social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors, classified staff, providing student staff safety, and parent involvement coordinators. This bill would increase this, the amount of percentage per the prototypical funding model, not above 1. And it requires each public school must have at least one school nurse and one counselor on site dedicated to serving the students of that public school. So there's an increase in 22, 23, and 24 related to, well, there's an increase in 22 related to nurses, social workers, psychologists, and counselors. Then in 23, 24, it's just nurses, and then 24, it's nurses again. So it looks like at the end of 24, it might be 1 for every 400 students for nurses for academic calculations. So again, it's passed the House, it's in the Senate committee right now, so we'll see how it goes.
Any questions for Sheriff?
1664.
Item 4A, items from the floor. Do you have anyone sign up to speak tonight? No one sign up to speak? All right, let's move on to item 5, unfinished business. We have the second reading for the policies that we amended our last board meeting. We'll go through them one at a time. So can I get a motion for second read? Actually, sorry. For item 5A, second read, amend policy 3231, student records. Any discussion? There's no discussion. We'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the second reading and then policy 3231, student records.
Motion is made. Take a second.
A second.
Motion made second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, second reading to amend policy 3241, student discipline. Any discussion? See no discussion. I'll entertain a motion.
I motion that we accept the second reading to amend policy 3241 student discipline.
Motion is made. Take a second.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5C, second reading to adopt policy 3411, accommodating students with seizure disorders. This is a new policy you're done with. Any discussion? There's no discussion. I'm going to entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve policy 3411, accommodating students with seizure disorder.
We have a motion to accept the second reading of officer for 11. Can I get a second? Motion made, second. All in favor? Aye. 5D, second reading to amend policy 3432, emergencies. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, I'm going to entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we, approve the second reading to amend policy 3432.
Motion made, can I get a second?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 5D, second reading to amend policy 3520, student fees, fines, and charges. Any discussion? Any motion?
I motion that we approve the second reading to amend policy 3520.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? None passed. 5F, second reading to amend policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff prohibited. Any discussion? Any discussion? Going to entertain a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the second reading to amend policy 5011, sexual harassment of district staff.
Motion made, can I get a second? Motion made, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, new business. Item 6A is a resolution. Working with Dr. Middleton, we proposed a resolution regarding mask wearing mandate from the governor, as well as the expected announcement supposed to come tomorrow. I'll read the resolution and then we'll take any discussion and then vote on whether we want to adopt this resolution of the board. So, district mask wearing measures. Board resolution number 21/2209. Whereas Granite Falls School Board of Directors needs to consider, debate, and approve policies and resolutions. Whereas the board is responsible for selecting, supervising, and evaluating the superintendent who serves as the chief executive of the district and is responsible for implementing the board policies. Whereas Governor Inslee and the Washington State Department of Health issued a mask requirement for all students and staff and visitors during the current COVID-19 pandemic. Whereas the district is legally obligated to comply with the mask requirement, which presently remains in effect. Whereas Chris Reitfeld, State Superintendent, stated via press release on February 9th, as part of the transition from pandemic to endemic, I believe it is safe and time to limit the statewide masking requirement for students and allow for a decision by local health officials. I recommend the governor and the Department of Health change the guidance to reflect this in the coming weeks. Whereas this anticipation, that Governor Inslee and the State of Washington Department of Health may repeal or limit the mask requirement to non-medical facilities, which may include making masks optional in schools, but such decision has not yet been made. Now therefore be resolved that once Governor Inslee repeals or modifies the current mandatory school mask mandate to an optional choice, the Granite Falls School Board of Public Schools, the board, authorizes the superintendent to make mask wearing measures optional to the extent that such measures comply with state and local health authorities. So briefly what this is saying is that we are in anticipation of changes coming, giving the authorization for Director Middleton to Dr. Middleton, to implement that immediately and not wait for a board meeting. So we're giving the authorization that once those regulations get lessened and changed, we can do that immediately and not have to wait for us to have a meeting at this time. That's the purpose of this resolution. Those are some changes we made from the first last week. Yeah. Okay. Any discussion on that, board?
Yeah, I guess I want to make it, why I'm supporting this is, and I guess I said it here and just make it clear that certainly currently there is a mask mandate requirement. And that hasn't changed. I was on a conference or Zoom call that Chris Reitfeld had today, and there's certainly anticipation that something happened on Thursday that maybe is going to have impact releasing or removing in mid-March or something along those lines. So currently it is still mandatory. However, the minute that it becomes an optional choice, we're ready to do it.
Yeah, we're giving them the authority to go get it done. Yeah, that's the purpose. Any other discussion? So we don't need a motion. We need a motion? Yeah, we need a motion. I can do it. I'll make a motion we accept the board resolution number 21/2209 district mass scoring measures.
I'll second it.
Motion made and second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, passes unanimous. Thank you, Cory. All right, we're on to item, sorry. 6B, which is the resolution 21/2207, replacement programs and operations levy for special elections. Did you want to actually give a brief?
Sure, I'd be happy to, yeah. So within that, there are actually two resolutions. This has been a very quick turnaround because we work with our DA Davidson and they work with their legal team in developing a resolution. And so we're asking that you approve this resolution so that we can run the election for this levy on April 26th. Now, there are two because we immediately sent the resolution from February 8th to the attorney to review. But then as we got feedback over the last week on, what was missing, we asked them, actually today, to add some additional verbiage in the ballot. And so you will see in that second levy, it lists textbooks. Instead of just learning materials, it says textbooks. And I believe it also makes reference to personnel or you can see that in there. So that would be the resolution that we would ask that you would approve tonight so that we, again, get down to some of the specifics. So it makes it clear when our voters receive their ballots, okay, this is about textbooks. This is, so. We are limited in the number of words that can be put in, so we were able to modify this ballot, which we would ask. We were not able to modify the second one because we had maxed out our words.
Any
So I
questions?
don't, does it say textbooks or instructional materials? Not that one matters more than the other, I guess. Not the textbooks. I see the space between text and books.
I'm sorry.
Where am I, what section?
There's a space between text and books.
Version 2 from.
Yeah.
So right above where it shows the collection is the wording, right? That's the ballot wording right above it. It says such as text, space books, textbooks, a single word. Anyway,
Yeah, there it is.
yeah, we should probably,
What section you guys looking
I'm looking,
Page 3.
it's section
Section
4,
4,
yeah.
and then the proposition, which is the actual ballot language.
Concerning a proposition to finance school programs and operation expenses. This proposition would authorize the district to support school programs, staffing, and operation not funded by the state of Washington, such as text, textbooks, instructional materials, supplies, utilities, transportation, and athletics. By levying the following excess taxes to replace the expiring levy on all taxable property within the district. I think it's worth calling out that this second version, the amount has changed. The previous was $2.11, and this one is $1.84, right?
$2.11 was the combination of.
Oh, it's both of them,
Yeah.
I see,
Yeah.
okay. So it's the same, it's just,
So
I guess I got it.
can we need to make a motion to have that, and our motion is include fixing the word textbook, or can
No, we'll just fix it.
it's just that, it's grammar, it's not,
I
it's
feel like
not
an
substance.
education, well, I feel like an education thing,
Yeah.
probably should spell it right. Anyway,
Any other comments, board?
is that all the wording? I guess I have that question. That right there at the bottom of section 4, that is what goes on the ballot. Is that true?
That's correct. That's what's on the ballot.
Okay.
So,
Is there any wording to change athletics to extracurricular?
Well, I think it's important though to say,
Well, I mean, like band, how about band?
no,
Yeah.
this is just giving examples. It's not exclusive.
I think if people in our community realize that high school football is impacted, and I mean, not just everything, but high school football is probably the largest draw of community members to the schools, in the fall, and it's fun, but the impact, I mean, it's funded through this, right? That's something we pay for.
But yeah, you can, I mean, I'll trust you in the wording, you want some space. All right, any other discussion? If not, I'm going to accept the motion. I'll make a motion. I make a motion to accept resolution 21/2207, replacement programs and operations budget for special education. Special elections. Do I need to specify 32 or something? Oh, you got it. Okay. All right. Can I get a second? Motion made second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That's pretty good. 6C, resolution 21/2208, replacement technology and school improvement levy for special elections.
This is the same wording. I know Director Leach and I had visited earlier to maybe expand on something, but we were up to word number 73. And we just didn't add another sort of a such as. And so I think it's just going to be imperative that when we talk about, we were talking specifically about heavy equipment.
Major equipment, right.
So we'll just have to, in our information to the community, spell out what that means. But thank you for.
Yeah, so my concern was, and again, this was just based on feedback from a community member that's, stopped and talked to me and said, if that's what you want, just say it, right? So I wanted to make sure that we get in here that our technology equipment for student learning make safety, energy, efficiency, and other capital improvements to school facilities and acquire major equipment by levying the following excess taxes. I just wanted to be clear, and I guess I'm just saying it now, right, that the major equipment, because I don't want anybody to think that we're trying to ask for a blank check of any kind. The major equipment we're talking about is like a boiler at the high school, right, for heat. We're not talking, right, we're not talking about buying a backhoe, right? We're talking about, lawnmowers, snowplows, boilers, things that are major hygiene items, right? Sometimes, there. And it's required by state law that, this particular person, we talked about the different buckets that things can come from. And all of these type of purchases have to come from this kind of bucket, so that's like Marshall can say that in more elaborate terms, but we must fund those things from this bucket, and without this levy, that bucket is empty, and those things don't get funded. So safety, energy efficiency, and major improvements don't get funded.
Any other discussion? If not, we'll accept the motion.
Make a motion that we accept resolution 21/2207, replacement, modifying that, resolution 21/2208, replacement technology in schools.
Election. I know, it's hard. I'll second that. All in favor? Aye.
We're so used to talking about special education, it's like your eyes just see it.
Yep. All right, we have now the 6D, IMC recommendations, approval of English language arts, monitor reading, prepared by Dr. Mann. We have Dr. Mann's attendance. Are there any questions on this curriculum that you have?
No questions, I just wanted to say that I sit on that committee and instructional materials committee and attended the meeting where we reviewed adding the additional iReady topics for reading, and I'm recommending to the board directors.
Any other questions?
Make a motion that we approve the IMC recommendation for the English arts, box for reading.
Motion made, can I get a second? Next second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 6E, IMT recommendation, approval of social studies, prepared by Dr. Van again. Any discussion, board?
Again, I was in this meeting, and this is a curriculum that is specifically from the state regarding tribal sovereignty in Washington State. And I've been looking on your screen since time immemorial. Yeah, I knew that. So I recommend that we approve this. It's something the state gives, I think, to all districts.
As part of the Washington.
Right.
Requirement.
Make a motion that we, are we good with that? Make a motion that we
Yeah.
approve the IMT recommendation for social studies.
Motion made, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right. Moving on to item 6F, library materials approval for Dr. Mans. Or any,
I was there. I reviewed it. I also ensured that the list of library books that were included were added to the agenda. There's links to anybody that goes online and would like to see which books are being purchased, those are there as well. And I guess just going back, there is a link for the social studies as well, and the English language arts, I read it is available for anybody to review for the district office. So I reviewed the library's materials, and feel comfortable recommending.
so you're comfortable recommending having animal noises? Well, do it. How about
Yes, animal noises, it's 2 thumbs up.
Baby bears adoption, that's good too.
I
know,
did not
it's like-
read them all.
I kind of want to read some of these.
I know, I reviewed the list.
Bookshop dog. Let me read that one. Elementary books are good.
I'm gonna check the good reads after this.
Yeah. But yeah, I really don't want to make comment on that. I appreciate giving the links up. People can review that. You know, the public can see all the books that are on there.
I think before we had some people come and make a comment asking how they could find out what that was, so I just, now that we have Board Docs and it's out there, make sure we got it.
Or no, good. So it's there for everyone to see. All right, any other discussion? You'll make the motion to do our meeting?
I make the motion that we approve library.
All right, motion is made.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that's unanimous. All right, 6G, out-of-state travel request for EcoCard. This was in the consent agenda. I decided to pull it because I wanted to talk about one thing. This is something that we would be able to support without the levy. And I'm not saying that as, just I don't want to make it seem like it's a threat. It's just, it's a fact of something that makes it hard to support without that levy funding. Luckily this year, it was already built into the budget, so, I mean, we can't technically afford it, but it's just something I think we have to think about. This is the kind of stuff that makes it hard not having the approval of the levy. That's why I wanted to,
Mr. Chair, we do have Mr. Davis here.
I would love to hear Mr. Davis on this. Please, talk to us about it, because honestly, I love EcoCard. I mean, you guys did that.
The national writing team, I'd like to say.
It's kind of hard to talk about it, I'm still mad over
Perfect.
It worked.
The EcoCard Club or class, the students have been trying to earn money all year long and have raised, they think they'll raise about between $3,000 and $5,000 towards offsetting the cost of the trip to Indianapolis. They will actually be using the Indianapolis Raceway where the Indianapolis 500 is run. So that's quite a sport. So, and then to offset the costs, and some of the funding will be from the CT budget. So we'll help with that. And we met with Mr. Nisley at the high school and Mr. Gallagher, who is the teacher who will be taking them back. We'll figure out how many chaperones we need to take and start to look at this. So once the board gives us permission tonight, if the board chooses to give us permission tonight, then we'll start to move forward with the next key thing is to purchase plane tickets. Mr. Gallagher has been in touch with all the students and the parents along the way. And we know that I think the last time we talked was about 4 weeks ago,
We thought there would be between 7 and 9 students that are interested in going back, and we know that will flex just because life happens and things go on. And as far as COVID goes, we will abide by whatever the COVID rules are in that state and in that area, and also any additional COVID restrictions that shall come before on the competition.
Any questions, comments, board?
My daughter was on the national team. I say it every time, and I fully support. I'm very proud of Granite Falls and the girls that won. They were up against. Understand that when these kids go to when they go to the national competition, our high schoolers are up against these universities that haul in huge semis with major crews and gear and tools, right? And the year my daughter and the other girls won, it was these girls, their dads, a couple of community members that are interested in participating, and they hauled the car on the back of the trailer, on the back of one of the dad's, vans, all the way to Denver, Colorado, right? I think it was Denver. No, they went
I think
to
it was
Detroit.
because I was up on that same
Yeah.
trip.
So, yeah, I mean, and the universities, major universities are coming up with their shiny semis and rolling out their cars with their entire pit crews. And I'm really proud of Granite Falls, and we make a good showing every single year, so.
And not only universities, but countries, because in our group, there was a team from Brazil, and they were a lot of fun because they would yell and stuff as supposed to be. But thank you, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. The kids, and Shell, puts on this sponsored Go Marathon, and, this is a major competition. It's attended by hundreds, I don't know, even a couple thousand people. There's a lot of people there, but it's a big deal, and it's well attended, and it's a great opportunity. So I fully support it.
So, again, this is just like every one of the things I love. I've spent many early ones getting kids off on donuts and stuff, very good luck. It's one of the things that makes me most proud about Granite, because Granite Falls High School is participating on this national, international level. I didn't know about Brazil. So it's one of the things we're able to do because of the weather.
You could expect, I'm gonna mention that my daughter was on the national.
Wait, your daughter was on that team?
Every time I'm
You never told me.
she's a junior in college now, and still next year.
Would you like to make a motion?
I make a motion that we approve the consent agenda.
No, the out of state.
Oh, I'm sorry, the out-of-state travel request for Eco Car.
Motion's been made. I have a second.
Second.
Motion made second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. On 6, another word. Alphabet. We're going to talk about the process for filling vacancy on the board due to a resignation. Yeah, resignation. So real quick, there has been some discussion in the community about trying to get more involved in the community in this process. Because state law is pretty clear that the board selects a representative or from pool of applicants until the board seat until the next general election, next regular election for the school board. It's been the law for, longer than I've been alive. And so what we actually have a policy procedure in place to get that done. Rather than talk about trying to get people more involved, before we start talking about that, there is something that we can do right now before we get the actual nuts and bolts is talking to Dr. Middleton about maybe postponing the actual interview and selection process from next Tuesday to the Tuesday after, so from the 22nd to the 1st. Gives a little more time to kind of organize the process. Is that something the board would, we don't need a motion for that, we just need a consensus. Is that something you guys put something back 1 week? I don't want to go much further because we only have till April 5th to fill the position.
That was my follow-up question,
Yeah.
because I know that we have that.
Yes, we have to April 5th, so that would give us a month if we are unable to come to a decision of the board, we have a month to figure it out.
So that would move the date of the first meeting back in 1 week.
Yeah, to the first. And the 22nd of first, just
I'm
moving
not sure
on.
of it, yeah.
So, okay, perfect, so that's done. So, a lot of the comments I want to start off is, there's a couple comments I want to acknowledge that I've seen on Facebook, that I just want to address at this point. I've heard it said a couple times that some people in the community, feel that we hide behind policies, procedures sometimes, so that we use it as a shield to not do anything. And, you know, I hear that statement and it bothers me because I don't consider it hiding behind policies and procedures. I feel like we're standing up for them. It's the policies and procedures that actually keep us legitimate. By the community knowing that we're following rules that are written down, not just making stuff up as we go, it gives us that legitimacy. So I hear people say like, well, I mean, you're just hiding behind it. No, I'm standing up, it's propping me up, it's keeping us honest. If we just made stuff up as we went, that leads to more problems. So that's why we follow these policies and procedures that we have. And so we have a policy about filling a board vacancy through a resignation. And it's a pretty simple policy. It says in case of vacancy of the board, the remaining board members will fill such vacancy by appointment. The board will see applications from any qualified person seeking to fill the position after suitable public notice. The board will appoint a candidate to serve until the next regular scheduled election. The appointment will be approved by no less than 3 members of the board with interviews conducted in an open public session. If there is fewer than 3 members, the Educational Service District Board members will appoint a sufficient number to constitute a legal majority of the board. Should the board fail to fill a vacancy within 90 days from the creation of such vacancy, the Educational Service District, ESD, board members will fill such vacancy. Appointees shall meet the requirements provided by law and will serve until the next regular school district election, at which time the director will be elected for the unexpired term. So that's the policy based on Washington law, specifically RCW 28A that .343. I know that's been referenced and it's above as well. So that tells us what we need to do. The procedure, which is written by our executive, Dr. Middleton, well, not by him, but in his role, tells how it's done. And this gets pretty wordy and lengthy. So allow me just to read it, explain what the procedure says we're going to do. So the procedure says, when a vacancy occurs on the board, it is in the best interest of the district to encourage as many citizens as possible to consider becoming a school director. To that end, the following procedure will be used to identify and appoint citizens to fill the board vacancy. Announcements of the vacancy and the procedure for filling will be made in general news media as well as general district publications. All citizens will be invited to nominate candidates for positions provided that the nominees will be residents of the director district in which the vacancy occurs and a U.S. citizen and a registered voter of the school district. The board secretary will notify nominees by sending them a summary of the direct responsibilities, soliciting for them a biographical sketch as well as a statement about their interest in being a board member. The board secretary will provide candidates with orientation information. The board will screen the candidates. If there are more than 5, it will select for interviews the 5 whose prior experience and expressed interest suggests they will be most able to contribute breadth of view to the board's deliberations as well as effectively represent a large segment of the community. Possible topics to discuss during the interviews are review of the WASA Code of Governance with group of board candidates, do a brief biographical sketch of self, as in training, interest, experience of policy boards, community and school activity, etc. Describe the major strengths of the district, describe the major shortcomings of the district, describe how the candidate experiences, training, and interest can contribute to the improvement of the district. Identify any commitments that might prevent the candidate from attending regular scheduled meetings, participating in workshops, reading study materials, etc. Allow the candidate an opportunity to ask any questions. The board will appoint the candidate who is, in the judgment of at least 3 members of the board, is most likely to contribute to the growth and development of the district's educational programs and operations. The board secretary will prepare for signature of all members. The board secretary will prepare for the signatures of all board members a letter thanking all candidates for the position and commending them for the interest in the district. So those are the procedures that are written. It's been brought to our attention by several community members as well as some members of the board that there's not a whole lot of avenues here to get the community directly involved in the process. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight is ways we can do that and still stay within what we're allowed to do, but ways we can improve that. And maybe consider changing this procedure, if not for this time, but for the next time that this might happen to get more involvement. So that's what the discussion is about tonight. Does that kind of make sense what we're talking about? One of my major concerns, however, is do anything drastic for this vacancy right now. I have a couple concerns from that, is I want to make sure it follows the posted and approved policies, as well as the posted procedures written up by the superintendent. But also, I have a concern about changing it drastically. We've already published to these candidates, the applicants that we have, what to expect. Changing it midstream might not seem like the most equitable thing to do. Say, hey, great, glad you applied, but now you got to do X, Y, and Z as well. So that's a concern I have. Now, this is just me. I mean, the board decides, what we're going to do, but those are my concerns. I still think there are things that we can do to get the community involved that still falls within these procedures and not change it drastically to what the applicants have already been told that they need to do. So that's kind of my thoughts and views on it. I'm curious what other thoughts and views. Am I in the minority, or what are you guys thinking? Yes, please. Amy.
I agree with you completely. I think at the very least, something that we could do is we have the questions that we are going to ask them over and over.
Are you about to steal my thunder?
Right?
Probably. What do you guys?
But-
Hold on. Let's
Okay.
write that. No, go for it.
So maybe we can poll the community and ask them what questions they want answers for. And so that we can come back and we can ask those questions for them.
Did you steal my thunder?
Did I steal your
You
thunder?
don't. No, but yeah, that's one thing is, that's definitely within our power to do. That doesn't
Yeah,
change the
It
process.
doesn't change
Yeah.
anything too much and it gets them involved. They can answer, they can ask the questions, but it's through us. That's what it's in.
I love that idea. What I had as well as that is I would love is community members to not just the questions, but tell us what they're looking for. There's nothing in here to say that we can't get what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Like, tell us what you're looking for in a board member. Let us know.
What you, yeah, exactly.
Any other thoughts, ideas?
Yeah, so, couple of things. So I agree with almost everything that you said. I certainly agree that we are a public institution that is accountable to the public at large. And in order to do that and to make sure that we effectively represent the public's will, we have policies, right? And there's laws, there's requirements, policies. The board writes policy. That is our job. It is the what, and the superintendent we designate to write the how. And certainly, we should never be a board that is violating our policies. So, but that's not what we're talking about today. So I think in order to have a good, robust discussion on this, we have to throw the policy part of your point off the table, because no one is talking about violating policy. So I think the term of we hide behind policy, I find that harsh and it hurts, because I've been on this board longer than anyone. I've been board chair 2 years, vice chair a year or two or something like that. And I don't feel, I certainly can tell you, and I know Director Butler's heart very well, I've never hid behind policy. Meaning, policy is what policy is. I think what we're talking about here is a revision of procedure. And in some ways, you just brought forth an idea that is essentially a revision of policy, a procedure, rather. I'm sorry, a revision of procedure. There's nothing in our procedure that says that we can or can't do that. What you said, which I'm completely fine with, but it's a revision of, what is black and white in there. And I think that's where the image of someone who is not intelligent about the political process or the public process, like the people that we serve, and I'm not saying all of them, I don't mean that demonstratively or negatively. I just mean that, most people don't know about policies and procedures and stuff like that. I do think that there is opportunities, and this is one of them, where we, in a response to the people that we serve, can modify procedure, which is easy. It doesn't even take the board changing anything. It's literally, we have a consensus in the procedure to change. There are, kind of thinking, spend a lot of time about thinking about this election, and I've been a member of 2 board nominations. And typically, there's not even a whole lot of interest, right? I remember there was one time where we actually even had to go back out for a second time because we only had one person involved. And there.
Actually, I don't want to create this free.
Yeah. And the public seemed, contrite to just kind of let us make that decision, and that was okay at that time.
So but that is certainly not the case this time.
Yeah, well, I'd like, real quick.
Hold on, don't interrupt.
I know, but I just want to clarify something. I agree, we can change procedure.
Right.
I'm behind that. I'm just saying, is it fair to the applicant to change it midstream?
Well,
That's my main
the applicants
concern.
make that decision, we don't make that decision. So we, as the board, do whatever we as the board wants to do, and we can go back out to applicants and say, here's the procedure that we'd like to go through, and cool with that. And they can say yay or nay. Again, it's not a violation of, we're just talking about a modifying of the procedure, and if that's an issue, if people who are trying to be nominated to the board have an issue with that, which relates to the board needs to go back out for a longer time, well, we just extended it a week, maybe we can see what the response is there, but, so I think in times like this, because of kind of, the response that we got, staff feel like they are out of, like it's the community, and so we have a community that is, voted on levy and have a, I would say it's safe to say a negative impression of us. I'm not saying the majority, but arguably, a significant amount of the community. And I think this is a way that this is a time where we can pivot, where we can allow for more voices. And I think that there needs to be more voices than just parents, okay? And I think parents are important, but this person's also going to be a representative of the district. And we had a really thorough process with the superintendent where we allowed, we met with, the union, and we met with teachers, students, and stuff like that. I'm not saying we necessarily need to get that deep, but I think with technology, there's a way that we can pop in little bits of that so that we can get a consensus of all the voices that this person is going to impact. And we don't even have to go on something modified procedure tonight and come to a way where we allow more voices to the table. Because no one is hurt by more voices coming to the table. But there's a difference between a voice and a vote. The board gets the vote, but we want as many voices as we possibly can. I mean, I think that would be something that would behoove all of us as most possible.
So what do you suggest?
Well, so I sent an email out, and I do want to apologize because I had a conversation with Director Butler on it, and this should have just gone to him and Dr. Milton at first, but in the interest of saving my time, I sent everyone out. So here's what I said. Here's what I propose. Applicants meet with stakeholders from district in each district and peer group. We include representations from admins, teachers, union, and certified staff in separate meetings. They all get to ask a handful of questions that they write, and we share with each applicant prior to the meeting so that they are prepared. At the end of each interview, we do not ask the group to rate each applicant. We ask them to provide feedback to specific set of questions that we generate, i.e., mutual official support for the Granite School District, stuff like that. Applicants meet with the board all at the same time. And by the way, I am malleable in this. I'm willing to modify this, but you asked me what I want, what I propose. We ask whatever questions we feel are important for our nomination process, and we allow the public to provide questions via an online service like Menti or something like that. Then at the end of the interview, we ask via Menti for the public to give feedback based on specific set of questions, similar to what we did with other stakeholder groups. And after interviews, we take all responses, receive review them, deliver it, support.
And so one of the, can I sure. I actually love that idea. My concern is changing it mid-application process for people who already applied. That's my concern. I mean, if I was gonna go interview a job, I got an application in, here's the process, everything's gonna happen great, and then, a week later, after we're changing the whole thing, you gotta do X, Y, and Z now. I'd be like, well, maybe I don't wanna be part of this group. That's my problem, is changing it mid-process. This was 2 months ago, it's not mid-process, I'm fine with that. That's my concern. I actually love the idea. My concern is doing it right now.
Let me ask you a clarifying question. How many applicants do we have so far?
That's something we can share. We have to.
Okay. So the scope of the impact is not enormous, and it still gives us enough interest. So now a clarifying question. So you're saying that the applicants have all the questions ahead of time?
Yeah. Because
Really? We're not gonna pull it up front here and sit in the.
No, just questions from the community, right? Not our questions.
I'm just kidding.
Which questions?
well, our procedures dictates the questions that we ask.
Yeah, but I mean, like, so the community would ask our questions for, so what questions?
So if you're, I don't know which page you're talking about. So the stakeholder groups,
Yeah.
like an hour or so before, we can give them a heads up when the stakeholder group can write their questions. And an hour or so, we can give it to them so that they're prepared, right? And then with the interview with the board, we can do it one of a couple of ways. We can ask for people to email us before and give them the questions up front so that they have a prepared answer. Obviously, the board has some specific questions that we want to ask. We can ask it during the meeting. You know, like I said, I'm malleable on that piece, but I think that giving them a heads up rather than cold. Did we really do cold?
Yeah, you
You always, we always do.
Yeah, you did.
Did we
It's always
get
cold.
You pulled the seat right up to the front, like right there, and I just sat
I got
there the
cold.
entire room.
Feel like everyone got cold.
That's horrible. Let me apologize for 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I mean, technically, our procedure does say that we will discuss, we'll describe the major, ask them to describe the major strengths of the district, describe the major shortcomings. We have some specific questions there.
Again, I'm fully, I love the idea. Like I said, my stated concern is doing it right now. Say, hey, by the way, we're changing everything in this process. We told this process, we're changing it.
We're not changing everything, we're adding some stuff.
We're adding some significant things to the process.
How many times have you gone to an interview and someone said, hey, I want you to talk to this other manager now? I mean, that's essentially what we're doing.
Except for the whole community.
So it's not the whole thing.
The only thing that I
Yeah.
worry about, I totally agree with both of you actually. The only thing that I worry about with Carl's is the organization of it and the time. Like, do we have the time to do all that and how are we gonna?
We just pushed it out a week. I can get this done in 3 days, no problem. Seriously. It's easy. It's scheduling a Zoom meeting, contacting Dr. Middleton, saying, hey, Dr. Middleton, you get a group of 5 people together that would like to help interview the next board director. Yes, Carl, there's 5 people. Hey, guys, here's a Zoom link. Email me your questions an hour before this meeting. I'll forward it to the guy, and away we go. It's literally the easiest thing.
So what do we want to do? I mean, what are the ideas? Because, again, this isn't a motion. This is just consensus of what we want to do.
Maybe I've been way too long, so I gotta ask you another question. So the 5 people that you're saying, like, hey, Dr. Middleton, find 5 people, they write up questions, so their questions are going to be in addition to the questions that are currently outlined in the procedure?
I think you're conflating board interview and these additional stakeholders.
Okay, so it's 2 separate, gotcha. Okay, see, I'm waiting too long. All right. Sometimes that happens.
So what are the options we have, like, on the table as it were? We have, so Carl wants to have an additional meeting before the actual interview, with, like, on the same day, clarify?
Whatever works good. I mean, I think if it's separated by a day or so, that's probably better. I mean, you can
Okay.
push it out a week.
Yeah, that's, okay. So, would you were willing to organize for this?
Yeah,
I mean, but I don't want to, let me stop short. I certainly don't want to, this board is about what Carl.
No, but I wonder what your vision is.
Yeah, so I'm certainly willing to help, but if the process is better, you know, I don't want to go rogue and be like, oh, Carl's got this, right? And sort of step in front of Dr. Middleton or us allowing him to do, the how. So, you know, I have no problem helping out as much or as little as needed to complete this process, I guess, all the reasons I said.
Well, I guess the reason I asked.
Hold on, your intent for having this pre-meeting meeting is to introduce the candidates to the community.
Well, to the community, to the stakeholders within the district and stuff like that, and I think that all of that information, for the same reason that, you know, when the 3 of us sat down to evaluate the superintendent candidates, you know, the feedback from those stakeholder groups was an important part of that discussion, right? You know, and we took that really to heart, what people both inside and outside the district had to say about the data.
I see the difference.
So it adds more voices in the discussion rather than, you know, we get the vote, but we're listening to other voices.
Right. So initially I was thinking, well, do we need an extra meeting? Because we could have people submit those questions at any time ahead of time so that we can include their questions in our interview process, right? However, if what you're envisioning is similar to a superintendent type interview where it was,
Not the forums,
Right.
not that level. If that's where you're going, sorry to interrupt you.
no, I'm just thinking, so you're thinking to have the stakeholders get to know you and then make a recommendation that way? Is that what you're thinking?
No, via Zoom meeting, basically schedule like a 15 to 30 minute Zoom meeting, right? Where this representative stakeholder group gets to meet with the potential applicant, is the right word to use there. And, you know, they can ask, obviously it's not a public meeting, so it's between them. And they can ask, you know, 3 to 5 or whatever, I'm just throwing out that number of questions, right? That they formulate before them, you know, what they think is valuable or how they want to interact or understand motivation, background, you know, whatever, priorities of the applicant. Like I said, give that to them, you know, an hour or so before so that they're prepared and someone can provide a response to that. And so they talk on Zoom for that 15 to 30 minutes and they say, okay, thank you. And at the end, we just ask, they answer some questions for us. Same way we did with superintendent. We feel this person supports the mission of Granite Hall School. You know, you're concerned about anything that you've heard. We don't ask them to rate. Because we don't, I don't want a situation where it's like, oh gosh,
There's no
why did
score,
you
right?
nominate my lowest rated person? We're not asking them to rate, we're just asking them for feedback based on what they heard.
Well, have
That
you
was
ever-
my question, was the output from that interview process. I guess I could go either way on this, as long as either we take in the questions and we ask them, or we have that meeting and, you know, and we say, hey, what did you think? But then get into this weirdness of like, how do you choose which five? The stakeholder thing, like, I mean, do we have 5 that show up like that? We do. What if we can, you know, we have whatever. I don't even know if I have a big deal or burden about having more than X number or whatever, so I can go either way on this.
So I think I can help. So have you been part of like the interview process for like principal or anything like that? It's a lot like that, correct? Yeah. We're not voting, we're not giving Josh a vote. He just wants our opinions on something.
And that's exactly where I'm getting the model from.
Yeah, yeah. Again, I love the idea. My concern the whole time has been springing it last minute like that. That's my concern. I love the idea. Mine's a time issue.
I think with Carl's idea, since we're pushing it a week out, the candidates probably already have next week penciled out on their schedules. So if we did the Zoom meeting thing, it could be at that same time and date, because they already have it penciled out and things. And then that gives us a week to go over, you know, what that 5 says.
I'm just, again, my concern is just last minute. I don't want to lose a candidate because we're changing the process midstream. That's my concern.
I don't concerned about changing it being similar to what you say, folks have made a spot for the 22nd, but do they have the first available? So I think we need to be a little flexible on the first, because that's the thing that we are changing that.
Yeah, exactly.
And most of them, if not all of them, are parents and they, you know.
So maybe, we can change to, I mean, again, should we reach out to the candidates to see what they're willing to do? Because I don't want to lose a potentially great candidate because we're changing stuff last minute. That's my concern.
I don't have a concern if we're flexible, so I understand the output of the stakeholder meeting now. I think that was where I was getting confused there, and I can see that there's value in that. And I think as long as we're flexible, we propose the first, it's 1 of 3 thus far, and perhaps more candidates.
No, it's
Oh,
closed.
it's closed.
It closed
That's
yesterday.
right. Yeah,
It's
you're right.
3.
So
Yeah.
if the 3 candidates have a schedule conflict that just can't be moved on the first, I think we need to be slightly flexible on the fact that we are moving that date.
But we only have till April 6th.
Well, I know, but
Yeah.
we're not asking to move it 30 days. I mean, if they can't be there on the first, can they be there on the second or the 8th or whatever, you know, I mean, that's hypothetical and.
My other issue is,
Contingency.
Well, and before,
Yeah,
I just want to make
please.
it clear, again, this is
not voting call, so I'm willing, my job, there's a ton of time on the outside looking down the road. My job is to support the will of the board, so I will support the will of the board. You guys love this idea, hate it, do it, don't, I will go home and I will be okay, knowing I spoke my mind.
Well, that's the hard part, is I think we all like the idea.
Yeah.
It's the functionality that we're worried about.
I'm okay.
Because again, I don't want to throw more work on Melanie, who's already trying to get the levies. I mean, it's just there's so much work to do. Because, I mean, you can do a lot, but someone's got to reach out to each of the individual candidates. Maybe I can try and do that and see about their schedule. And maybe change it last minute again on them. And this is my concern, is logistics.
You're taking up the level of effort to schedule the additional meetings, we're not throwing that on the table right on
Yeah.
the side.
So
So that's good.
are you going to reach out to the candidates, see if they're willing to do this? What if they say no, we lose a candidate? That's, again, I just don't want to lose a
We
candidate
can have the
because,
conversation, there's 3 people and I hope that. Let's see, what's that?
would you mind, I mean, doesn't, because that's as long as you be willing to ask Carl, talk to them?
Sure.
Okay. Now, what are we going to talk about doing the stakeholder interview process?
Yeah.
Okay.
What you're asking.
Is that, I just want to make, I am, I make sure we're all asking the same thing though. You always restate, so we're all like, we leave with the same idea.
I'm willing to hear what Dr. Milton thinks about it.
Please, sorry.
I would, of the opinion of keeping it as we were originally planning. If we get some questions from stakeholders, that's great. I like the idea down the road, but we have 3 candidates. One of them, we know, works a wonky schedule. To get 2 nights in a row.
Are we gonna get the letters?
We will beforehand. When do we get those? We usually get them, what, like?
We just closed yesterday.
We'll get them the day before.
No, I usually think it's all right after it.
Right after close, yeah. Oh, yeah, I think it was right after close. We get them like so. Like it just closed last night.
Okay.
So we're gonna get them.
I'm really not in favor of using the next Tuesday. I mean, if it was just gonna be what we were originally planning, that would be fine, but I'm really not in favor of using that date as a possible stakeholder when, we have people going out of town this weekend. It's a 4-day weekend for a lot of folks. I like moving it out the first. If in the future we want to do something more involved, great. But that's my opinion, and whatever you decide, I'll do. I won't let Melanie be involved because she has got so much to do. That's I'm going to protect her time. We've got levy things going on. We've got lots of publications going out. We've got some attendance issues that honestly have to take precedence. But I will do whatever to make this happen, whatever you decide.
So my preference, I think, I'll state it again, their preference, maybe not consensus, is I like the idea of getting questions in the community that we can ask rather than at the meeting. The more I think about it, I just don't feel like even without a week, we can get it done with justice deserves. And I don't like the idea of changing it on the applicant's whole process. We've already told them the process, I don't like changing it. So that's, my preference is, we can add questions from the community, get their voice involved there. But the stakeholder thing, I think is too early. I want to do it down the road, but let me get right this time. That's my thought.
I think I'm going to say you guys can do it. Yeah, just logistics and things like that. Just checking our candidates and stuff. So I would say, doing stuff in the community. And reach out to teachers and, whoever and get as many, different questions as you can and people are involved. It's not that difficult to do.
And we have to write the questions in.
And I think it's definitely something that we put, in policy for the next time. Or procedure, yeah, definitely.
Well, we don't write the procedure.
But
Well,
we can direct them to it.
yeah.
No one better resign soon. You can't resign until we get this. What are your thoughts, Dr. Reese? Which way do you think?
Honestly, I can see value both ways, I truly can. So I'm kind of, either way, we're getting input from stakeholders, right? It's just, are we getting input from stakeholders verbally, like, where you get more from the communication, you know, than the words. But either way, we're seeking stakeholder input. So I think that's the important thing for me, that's the goal. The how you get the stakeholder input, I don't have a strong comment.
One thing
Can I
too.
pause just for a second? Someone just told me they can't hear on the YouTube meeting. Is the sound up?
The sound's up. You're just speaking too soft.
Oh.
Sorry.
No, you're you're okay. I can't hear the audio, so.
One thing too about the 5-person thing,
Is
especially
this the
right
mic
now,
right here?
is that I don't know if that's a broad enough amount.
Oh, well, the number the number was,
Well,
I think
but-
it's never figured out, that we could use 10.
Well, yeah, but,
Or is that correct, Carl? You weren't stuck on 5, any number.
yeah.
All right, I think the community liaison should, tell them it's-
I can do that.
So what do you, Alex, we need to come to a
Great
consensus.
delegator.
So we're accepting input if anyone has any
Yeah.
questions and like us to consider.
I can do that, I can
You know.
compile that, yeah, no problem.
So what's the consensus? I mean, what are we doing? I want it clear. Are we,
Can you get behind the reach out with the questions?
Oh, we are a group, man. We are, I mean, I disagree, but my job is to support. So, I mean, and it's a 3-1 vote, and that is democracy.
I'm abstaining on the vote, so,
You can't abstain. You can't.
it's not technically a vote, it's a
it's not a
consensus.
vote, that's why I'm abstaining.
One thing I do want to say is, I do love the idea of getting the groups together.
Yeah.
Mine is just a timing issue. So, okay, so consensus is we're going to reach out to community, get questions, they're asked. We are gonna reach out, I know you want to get one, Melanie, can she call the candidates? You said it was the first.
We'll take care of it.
Take care of that one thing, okay. Not for that meeting, just,
Wait, why are we- Oh, because people are going to be there to see the questions.
yeah, because it's already weekend, everyone's gone.
Really? Or they can.
Not me,
Oh,
I don't want to talk about that, I don't want
Oh,
You're
sorry.
getting excited over this. All right, and so you'll put up both the asking for questions.
Absolutely.
Awesome, thank you.
It's just the consent.
There are additions.
I'm already, they're right here in the file.
All right, so, all right, then moving on to item 7, consent agenda. There are additions. Any comments about, or discussion about the consent agenda? I
I,
have
Director
one,
Beach, I saw an email from you where you said something wasn't included in that. Are we okay?
There was one, letter that we received as an attachment that was, the person's name was not in the first one report. So there was the letter, but then their name didn't appear.
They were on the February 2nd agenda.
That's the letter, the updated letter. It was an updated letter.
Ah, gotcha. Alright. I
Um,
guess technically I'm supposed to ask you a question. So, do you know why there was a weird attachment? Cool.
I want to make a comment about the retirement. Do I have to accept it? Can I see Cindy working forever? That's gonna be really, I know. I'm just gonna be- All right, let's have the motion, set the consent agenda with the additions.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we accept the consent agenda with the additions.
Motion's made, can I get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we are now closing our meeting at 8:26 PM. Thank you.
Well done.
Aye.